Restaurants are amazing. They're really amazing places.
Afraid to take risks, doing things how they had always been done.
Convince anyone to come work with me. And with the restaurant industry's notorious turnover rate, how would I get them to stay?
Oftentimes, we find ourselves wandering around, searching for a place to dine in, only to be faced with long lines of other hungry customers. I bet it has made you wonder about how big the profits of the restaurant owners must be. The truth is, small profit margins are actually what's commonplace in the restaurant industry. You'll probably think that's impossible given the prices you usually see on menus, but that's just barely scratching the surface of what goes on in terms of costs and profits of maintaining these restaurants. Now, I love eating out as much as the next person, and I have my own favorite list of go-to restaurants where I go during celebrations, dates, and whatnot. However, are restaurants really that profitable? Why do some restaurants succeed while some others close down during their first couple of years? How do restaurants actually make money? That's exactly what I will be discussing with you in this video. The food and beverage industry has been one of the hardest hit industries during the coronavirus pandemic, and people have been wondering how well restaurants have been coping with the lockdowns. So sit back, relax, and listen up as I tell you all about restaurants and just how profitable they really are. This is Business Explained. To learn more about all things money, get educated about how to do business, become business savvy, and enjoy more videos like these, subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell, and may you be granted with many, many sweet returns. As I've mentioned, the selling prices in restaurants are just a small fraction of what we have to account for in terms of restaurant profitability. Selling prices are not equal to the profit that the restaurant owners receive. To compute for restaurant profit, you first have to know the different types of profit. The first one you must note is the gross profit, which people usually confuse as the final profit. Gross profit is a selling price reduced by the cost of goods sold. In other words, it's the cost of the ingredients deducted by the cost of the meals they're used for. For the more stable and successful restaurants, the gross profit margins are usually around 70%. Now, the other type of profit is more detailed and sheds more light on the actual profit margin of the restaurant. This is called net profit, which is the difference between the gross profit and the overheads and financial charges. Overheads include the wages, rent, and utilities, while the financial charges include the interest on loans and equipment leasing costs. As expected, the net profit is much smaller than the gross profit, especially since wages alone take away as much as 35% of sales. A restaurant would already be considered as one of the top earning restaurants if it manages to keep even just 10% of sales as net profit. So if you really want to become a restaurant owner, you have to keep in mind that apart from success being a long-term goal that can take several years, and apart from restaurants having various sources of losses like seasonality, staffing changes, and waste, the restaurant industry has very little when it comes to net profit margins. Restaurants are actually seen as just providing a wage to the owner with a minuscule profit margins as a mere bonus. Other than the different types of profits and costs, we must also take into account the different types of restaurants. FSRs, or full-service restaurants, given their prices, food quality, and establishment size, may seem like the most profitable option, but their average profit margin is actually just around 3 to 5%. As mentioned earlier, wages alone can take as much as half of the restaurant's gross profit, and FSRs typically have the most laborers compared to other types of restaurants. These may include kitchen staff, managers, servers, bartenders, and hosts. The quantity of these vary depending on the restaurant size, price range, turnover rates, location, and other factors. The next type of restaurant is what is usually seen as a counterpart of FSR, and that is a fast food and QSRs, quick service restaurants. The typical profit margin for these restaurants can range from 6 to 9%, which is higher than that of FSRs, since fast food and QSRs tend to need less staff, use frozen and pre-prepared ingredients and food, which cuts down the costs of COGs and have higher turnover rates. Food trucks are another restaurant type that has lower costs, which keep them at the same profit margin as fast food and QSRs. Their overhead costs include rent, insurance, staff, and utilities are far lower than that of FSRs. They also garner additional profit through rental fees for events, which can usually cancel out the negative effects caused by external barriers like bad weather. If you're looking for having similar food quality compared to FSRs, but low overhead costs like food trucks, you may consider the last type of restaurant, which is catering. The typical profit margin of catering businesses is between 7 to 8%, but a high-end catering business can have profit margins of up to 15%. Now that we've covered the different types of profit and types of restaurants, we can move on to the information about the failure rates of the restaurant industry. One of the main struggles of restaurant owners is competition. Due to increasing restaurant competition, restaurant owners are forced to bring their price down, with the added difficulty of increasing them in the future. We can see this as classic supply and demand economics. The greater the supply, the lower the prices. Unfortunately, the competition isn't even just limited to similar restaurants. There is also the competition among the different types of restaurants. Nowadays, fast food and QSRs are among the fastest growing markets in the restaurant industry. Other than issues related to other restaurants, there are also factors with each restaurant that contribute to failure rates and difficulty gaining profit. One of these factors is wages. Restaurant wages have been constantly increasing given high turnover rates, low unemployment rates in certain countries, and new minimum wage laws which call for higher minimum wages. The difficulty to retain employees increases, leaving restaurant owners to virtually no choice but to increase their payrolls. Other than wages, COGs also keep increasing. Consumers continue to demand healthier, organic, and local ingredients, which is costing restaurants a lot more than usual. Normally, just purchasing the actual ingredients can take as high as 30% of each restaurant's costs.
Make change. And the ways that I found to make change and the ways that I encourage you to make change are to celebrate individuality.
Although the mentioned factors affecting restaurant profits are basically unavoidable, there are some factors that we can actually deal with. One thing we can deal with to hinder profit loss is by debunking restaurant profitability myths. Let's go ahead and check out the first myth. The first myth is one that most people are familiar with, regardless of their occupation. You know how even just seeing the word sale can instantly rope people into buying whatever that is, whether or not they actually want it and want that much of it? Well, even restaurant owners aren't immune to that marketing strategy. This restaurant profitability myth is that buying larger quantities to get volume discounts saves money. Now, it may seem cost-saving when you think of it, but it can be counterproductive, especially if you purchase far more than what's needed. Doing so would only get you extra waste, theft, spoilage, and larger portion sizes. Aiming for profitability involves focusing on product use and not quantity discounts, even if that means the price per unit is higher. With that in mind, we move on to the next myth. Now, this one also involves thinking that saving leads to larger profits, but instead of saving through quantity, it involves saving through quality. This myth is that keeping food costs low lead to larger profit margins. The truth is, the profit isn't as dependent on the food costs as you think. What affects a profit more is how many gross profit dollars each menu item generates. The next myth is also related to food costs, and it's that analyzing the food costs of each item is the most crucial factor to consider in pricing the menu. That myth may seem reasonable since it means that you make sure the price of each item is high enough to make up for its costs, but in actuality, what you should focus on the most is analyzing how much customers in your target market will be willing to pay for it. Although this would most likely be lower than you'd want your prices to be, it ensures that customers will actually buy those dishes. With this in mind, evaluating your customers' income levels and spending habits will provide beneficial for your process of pricing your products. The last myth has little to do with gaining profit and focuses more on tracking your profit. As a restaurant owner whose goal is to have a profitable establishment, you may be swayed by each profit record as soon as you can get your hands on them. But that can make you fall into the myth that profit and loss statements should be prepared and reviewed monthly. The truth is, the frequency of your P&L statements won't make it faster and easier to see the progress of your establishment. Restaurants don't profit the same way each day. In fact, most, if not all, restaurants get more than 50% of their sales in just 2 of the days in the week, Fridays and Saturdays. Many restaurant operators prepare their P&Ls on a 4-week, 28-day cycle so that each P&L reflects the same number of days each week. Now we know what doesn't work, so what does? Well, although we can't always ensure that a restaurant will be successful, there are ways to ensure an increase in profit margin. 2 main ways to do this is by increasing sales and decreasing costs. With these, you get to work around the inevitable profit killers, which are COGs, labor, and overhead. Increasing your sales volume will help widen your profit margin in terms of fixed costs like rent, utilities, and maintenance. So how can you increase sales volume? By utilizing ways to grab customers' attention and interest. Some of the best ways to do this are through online ordering, loyalty programs, menu design, upgrading your POS technology, and getting online, with a minimum being having a website and social media accounts for your restaurant. Decreasing costs won't exactly eliminate the required costs, but will remove enough of it to allow for more net profit. Decreasing costs includes reducing COGs, which doesn't necessarily mean going for cheaper ingredients that offer lower quality. This can be done through comparing vendors, taking more accurate inventory, and getting ahead of food waste, among other solutions. Controlling labor costs is also a viable option, and it can be done without negatively affecting your staff and keeping them on livable wages. In order to do this, you may use software to create more efficient scheduling and prevent early clock-ins. You can also add benefits that aren't costly, like tenure perks and days off, in order to keep your staff satisfied and decrease turnover. Decreasing turnover goes a long way, since your staff also affect your customers. Lastly, reducing waste and theft can benefit your costs, and this can be done by using an inventory management system, which is far more superior to the pen and paper method. Taking part in the restaurant industry is tricky and offers a smaller profit margin than other businesses, but as you can see, there are many ways to educate yourself and your staff in order to manage your profit and earn money.
That our business is nothing without the great people that we've collected. It reminds me that these people are the key to our success.
What do you think about the restaurant industry? Do you see yourself opening up your very own restaurant someday? Let me know and let's talk about it in the comment section down below. I'll be replying to all of you who comment within the first hour. If you like this video, you should definitely check out my other video called The Economy of Cyprus Explained. Cyprus has one of the most bustling economies of the world, and it is constantly and rapidly expanding. It is known as the jewel of the Mediterranean, and for good reason. Curious to see what those reasons are? Check out The Economy of Cyprus Explained to get a real good look at what I'm talking about. Stay tuned, stay educated.